What is the meaning of life? Why are we on this planet? Now, these are some pretty hard questions. We may actually never find that out. But on this episode, we're going to review Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl right now. So when I choose to read a book, first I research it. I go check out the Amazon reviews, I go check out some YouTube reviews on it, and consistently people were saying that this book single-handedly changed their lives. So I definitely had to pick it up. And the whole premise of the book essentially is Viktor Frankl is a Jewish psychologist that was unfortunately caught up in the Second World War. And he ended up being in a concentration camp, more specifically Auschwitz. And he tells us his experience while he was in there. And you would think that he's only going to say negative things, which obviously a huge part of it was, but he has this mindset and understanding that there was some positivity that he got from that experience. And that in itself is just truly amazing. And the way that this book is made is actually very interesting. It's really split in two halves. The first part is really the experience and the storyline of him being in the concentration camp. And the second part is the psychology behind every single thing that was happening there, from his inmates, from himself, from the guards, and that whole experience. So this is why I truly believe that this book has resonated for years and years, and it's sold over 12 million copies, is because it has this balance of the story and the understanding of what's happening behind the story during this time. So now, without further ado, let's jump into the best 6 ideas of this book. The first best idea of the book is inner freedom. So over here, Viktor Frankl starts explaining what happens when the prisoners walk into the concentration camp. They get taken away everything they own, from their clothing, from their jewelry. They get structured in what time they're going to sit down, when are they going to stand, where they're going to go, when they're going to eat. So it's definitely shocking in the beginning. But he says that amongst all of this, the prisoners still have their inner freedom. But for that to happen, it's a very specific choice and how their mindset is going to be and how their mentality is going to be and their spirituality. What are they going to have faith in? Now, in practice, this seems so simple, right? But I can't even fathom to understand what the people are going through. But he explains it over here. Even in that situation, there is this positivity that could come out of it. And it's by structuring that. And it's the only way that you could truly keep your dignity as a human, even in this crazy situation. But for that to happen, like mentioned, you have to be very specific and intentional on how you're going to do that. The second best idea of the book is control your destiny. Over here, he says that the doctor that was in charge of the concentration camp noticed that there was a huge peak of people dying right after Christmas. And what the doctor came about was that usually people were imagining that they were going to be with their families and with their loved one during the holidays. And when the reality hit that that wasn't the case, people were dying, and it was just with their thought. And an example that he gave, once again, Viktor Frankl over here, was one of the people that he was close with, and one of his inmates, let's call him. He actually had a dream in February 1945 that the war was going to end on March 30th, 1945. So he was so believing of this dream that he vividly saw that in March 30th that the war was going to be over, and he believed it, and he told everybody, and he was just going about it like almost happy that I know when it's going to end. And when March 30th came and nothing happened, 31st came, nothing happened, the day later he actually died. And this is just a proof of you are the placebo. Funny enough, right? I actually did a book review on this specific aspect, a book that was done by Dr. Joe Dispenza, and I'll actually link it up over here if you guys want to go see it. The real consciousness of what you can control and your beliefs, how they create that. And it actually happened over here in a negative way in these 2 examples. 1, the prisoners thinking in Christmas that they're going to go spend time with their family. And 2, this man thinking at March 30th, 1945, the war was going to end. And he wasn't that off, but he was so convinced that it was going to happen that his own understanding and beliefs actually killed him. So you do control your destiny. You just have to think of the right things. The third best idea is change your mindset. And the best way I could explain this to you guys is from Viktor Frankl himself. I'm just going to read one part of the book. It did not really matter what we expect from life. but rather what life expects from us. We need to stop asking about the meaning of life and instead to think about ourselves as those who are being questioned by life daily and hourly. This is once again just phenomenal for me, because to think about this man being in this situation and he comes out like this, and to think of his mindset in this way, it's amazing. He's not thinking about, oh my God, what life? Why did you do this to me? Or, oh, what's happening? He's really taking the time and think of, what is he trying to teach me? What am I being questioned on? And this reminds me a lot of a famous quote and speech given by John F. Kennedy, which he said, don't ask what your country could do for you. Ask instead what you can do for your country. And this is the mindset. It's every single time you're going through a situation, stop thinking about what's happening to you and oh my God, you feel bad for yourself. Ask, why is that situation happening from you and what are you supposed to learn from that specific situation? So just this little shift of a mindset is going to help everybody enormously. The fourth best idea of the book is empathy. And this is my favorite point. The reason why is I truly believe people have to be a lot more empathetic, and when you practice your empathy as a human being, you just grow and you just become so much better. So I'm going to do a call to action, really look up what is empathy. I'll actually put a definition over here and try to practice it in your life. And the reason why I'm talking about this, in the book, Viktor Frankl talks about a story. One of his friends was walking with him, and this is after they got out of the concentration camp, so the war was over, and they were just walking, and they had to get to a certain point. And the friend grabs Viktor Frankl's hand and he pulls him through these young crops that were growing, and they walk towards that crops and on that crops, and they kill the crops. So Viktor is like, wait, what are we doing? We're killing these crops, let's go around. And his friend turns around super angry and tells him, who cares? Hasn't enough been taken from us? My wife, my kids, they're all dead. And Viktor Frankl stops and looks at him and he says, not because somebody has done wrong to us that gives us the right to do wrong to others. And when I read this part, this was like an aha moment. Like it just shook me to my core, because I'm looking at this man, I'm reading the book, and this guy has been through hell and back. Like he lost all of his family, and he's been through Auschwitz and these concentration camps, and he has this right state of mind to say, not because somebody's done something wrong to me that I have to do something wrong to somebody else. We don't have that right as human beings. And once again, it just gives me to a projection that me in my great abundance and blessing around me, what right do I have to be angry for anybody for any petty, small, stupid reason or whatever the case is? And I'm inviting you guys maybe to think about that in yourself as well, to see what might be bothering you right now, that you might have an issue with somebody, but in fact, it's so petty. So if you really look at this contrast of this man thinking like this, in fact, it just helps me for being somebody so empathetic. So this is why this part was something I really appreciated a lot. The fifth best idea of the book is meaning of suffering. So over here, he explains that if you don't put a meaning in your suffering, then your suffering is going to be a lot harder. Your suffering somewhat ceases if there is a specific meaning to it, a valuable meaning. Like you used to give the example that when people used to come into the concentration camp and they used to say, I have nothing else to live for, or if they got to a certain point that it was their breaking point and they thought of that, they would automatically die. It wouldn't be very long that they would not be among us anymore. But he said, if the people had meaning, like I am suffering so my family won't suffer, or in Viktor Frankl's case, when he walked in, he had a booklet with all of his research, and he was preparing a book about this research, and obviously they took it away. So his meaning for survival was he has to survive to put down this book and create this book for society. So if you have a specific meaning, that will help you during your struggles. Now he does mention very clearly that you don't need to suffer to have meaning. We're just saying over here, if you are in a state of suffering, if you put meaning towards it, your suffering is not going to be as bad. The sixth best idea of the book is logotherapy. Now, the reason why I wanted to talk about this whole concept was actually developed by Viktor Frankl himself. And the whole premise of it is the main motivation and force for an individual is to find a meaning in life. And the way that he explains in the book to find your meaning, there's 3 ways to go about it. Number 1 would be to create work or to do a good deed. Number 2 would be to encourage somebody or to experience something. And the last one would be to face something that you have no choice to face it, to overcome it, to become better than it, and actually triumph over that. And that's how you'll have a meaningful life or find meaning in your life. Needless to say, I truly enjoyed this book. And I completely understand now why millions and millions of people throughout the years have resonated with this book. There's just so many golden nuggets in here that are just phenomenal. And for people that don't like to read thick books, this is definitely a smaller book, so I definitely suggest you guys to pick it up. The Amazon affiliate link will be down below. And if you guys like the book reviews, the content over here, do not hesitate at all to like and subscribe. And I'm going to leave you off with this: live your life on purpose and with purpose.